So for both of you, I talked to Neil Salis Griffin earlier in the week. And since he came aboard early as a subject, he told me at first, you said it was going to be a general look at Chicago in an undetermined way. And then it obviously shifted to the mayoral campaign. What determined that shift?
I think his memory's a little faulty on that. I read the piece, or I listened to the piece, which was great. We were always intending to follow the mayoral race, which was why I reached out to him.
Very good.
Along with, as Zach and I were doing, other candidates. But I did make it clear to him that that's not all our interests lie in, that we weren't just looking to do a political film about the mayoral race, that we really wanted it to be a much more mosaic portrait of the city with the mayoral race as a kind of spine, which is what we made. But it probably was more about the mayoral race than he imagined it would be. And that's very likely I gave him that impression.
Very good.
The thing that maybe wasn't imagined was the scope of the series. You know, it was supposed to be a film, but then it became a series because so much happened and we were running around covering so many different things.
Yeah.
Interesting. Steve, as I watched this, I saw your style emerge almost immediately, that deliberate, allowing a scene to unfold rather than cutting where other people would have cut. When you are editing, does this deliberateness emerge in the first cut? And then when you go back to trim while doing the final cut, do you keep it deliberate by the way it comes back in the story? I'll give you an example, the barbershop scene in the first episode where you cut between South Side and Bridgeport.
Right. I think that's a really nice way of saying that we make long films. I'm going to take that as a compliment. Yes, you know, we live for those kind of moments where a real scene is happening that we can both, when we're in the field filming, that we can be privy to and capture. But then, of course, when we get to the editing, to kind of preserve what was special about them. And of course, you have to edit them. You know, they are edited. But you know, that barbershop, the sideline barbershop on the South Side, there were early cuts of that were like 10, 11 minutes long, and it wasn't because it wasn't interesting.
Right.
There was just a lot going on. So it worked its way down, but it's still, for most films, it's a long scene. And I think we really feel like that's an important thing, is to really plunge you in and have you be immersed in scenes like that.
Very good. Zach, since this is your fourth film with Steve, what felt different to you than any of the other docs? And in your role, did you feel a need at any time to advise in the story to get it back on track?
Watch it now.
I know. Ooh, I know. Watch it. No, actually, this was a very unique experience in that, you know, the classic, you know, experience is that we're following a certain subject, you know, a certain person or persons, and we sort of follow the trajectory and some sort of, you know, arc. But in this story, in this series, we're trying to do a snapshot of the moment in the city. And so it really spread us out in a way that we don't normally spread out. So I do feel like, you know, that was unique. And also the serendipitous nature that we sort of allowed to happen and bring us places. And, you know, so many times, as, you know, has been mentioned before, of like people come up to you when you're out with a camera in the world and say, hey, I want to, and normally it's like, you know, we're out, you know, we have to go or we can't do it. But this time we were really allowed to just say, okay, what do you have to say? And many scenes and many people we met were because of that openness.
Steve, as we are entranced by the mayoral campaign of 2018-19, we suddenly get to the end of that rather abruptly, and another story is told. Again, was this your intention once the mayoral part played out, or did you intentionally stop the editing process to add things to what had become the final cut in this series?
You're talking about episode 5 now?
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't want to give anything away, but yes, episode 5.
Well, no, so, you know, it was interesting because we knew we wanted to follow the mayoral campaign and sort of see that as a natural ending originally, right?
Sure. Yeah.
We probably thought before we got to the runoff between Preckwinkle and Lori Lightfoot, that we might hang in there through the end, through that election.
Right.
But it was funny because Zach and I, and my son Jackson was very much a part of this team. It's sort of like when we got to that February first round election and got through it, we were kind of like, I think we're done. I mean, not only did we feel like we were done story-wise, we felt like we were done.
Yeah.
The idea of like then getting back up on the horse as intensely as we had been for the next 6 weeks, and it seemed like the audience would be like, really, are you going to make me watch that? I mean, so we decided that was going to be our primary end, and that we would deal with the rest of it in a more postscript fashion, which is what we did at the end of episode 4. But then when the pandemic hit, and the fact that the sale of this series was interrupted by the pandemic and efforts to sell the series, we decided, we were like, we worried that selling the series after the pandemic had subsided enough and things got back to normal would be difficult, because people would be like, the world's changed. That's a historical series now. That's not the world we're living in. And even though that's not true, all those issues that come alive in those first 4 episodes are the things we are living with now. We just felt like we needed to get back out there, and what started out to be a postscript, which was just going to be on the pandemic, turned into a full-on episode because of the George Floyd upheaval.
Amazing. This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com.